Cocaine Cowboys, the deadly rise of Ireland's drug lords, the live show is on sale now. We're on the road on February 10th at the Lime Tree Theatre in Limerick, February 15th in Cork's Everyman Theatre, and on Sunday 18th, we're back at Dublin's 3 Olympia. April takes us to Galway's Town Hall Theatre, Killarney's INEC and Belfast's Waterfront Studios. Check mcd.ie or venue for ticket sales. Listen, we hear it all. You, particularly in the Old Bailey, hear all the gory details of a lot of people's, last days on earth, how they were murdered. But this one really stands out, doesn't it, Chris?
Yeah, it's a shocking case. And obviously, when I was sort of writing about it and tweeting about it, I had to leave out some of the gorier details, as you can imagine.
So what happened? This is a Turkish guy called Koray Alpergin. He's the victim in this case. So tell us what happened to him in October of 2022.
Well, firstly, the funniest thing that, the weirdest thing when you only realise when you actually go to the crime scene is how close it is to Tottenham's stadium. So, Tottenham Hotspur, famous football club, world known around the world, especially in Ireland, I imagine.
Yeah.
They've got this brand new spanking stadium on Tottenham High Road. And on the other side of the street, literally on the other side of the street, is a bar or a restaurant called the Stadium Lounge. And in October 2022, that was the scene of this horrific crime, where a guy called Koray Alpergin, who was very well known in the Turkish and Kurdish community in North London, because he was a DJ. He owned a radio, Turkish language radio channel. So he's very well known. He was abducted and, horrifically tortured and killed. I mean, the judge made no doubt about it. He was murdered, even though so far nobody has actually been convicted of murder.
So what happened? Was he taken out of that venue and brought somewhere else, or did this all happen kind of under the shadows of Tottenham Hotspur Stadium? Yeah,
I mean, there was a bit of CCTV footage which explained what was going on, but there was a lot sort of we don't actually know. And there's a lot of speculation, but put it this way: so the night of October the 13th, 2022. He went on a date with his Turkish girlfriend, Gözde Dalgudak, who was visiting from Turkey. It was her first time in London, and no doubt her last. She was over. They went to a very nice restaurant in Mayfair, had probably a very nice evening, and then came back to his flat in Enfield, which is a little bit north of Tottenham. And there they were suddenly attacked by this gang who were in a van. And this was about sort of 10 o'clock at night. This gang grabbed both of them, put them in the back of the van and, drove off and then took them to the Stadium Lounge, to the back of the Stadium Lounge. And it was there that over the following few hours that he was tortured to death. He probably died sometime before 4 a.m. in the morning.
More than 90 injuries were described during the court case. What was this lounge? I mean, you're talking about 10 o'clock at night, so the lounge was full of punters. Was it open? Was it serving drinks?
No, it was actually it was closed. It was sort of being refurbished. In fact, one of the individuals who was supposed to be sort of part of that, people refurbishing it, Talib Güzel, his name is, he has since been shot dead. He was shot dead in August this year, very close by. Rumour has it that he was sort of silenced. He was, because he might have been going to go to the police or, give evidence, etc. But yeah, it was closed at the time. It was shutters down on the front, so the world didn't see what was going on in that sort of back room where he was tortured. One of the police officers described it as being like a literally being like a gangster movie. You know, you've seen probably some of the pretty cruddy London gangster movies where, you know, people are, you know, he wasn't hung up on a meat hook, but it was sort of on that sort of scale of torture.
So where was the girlfriend when this was happening? Did they actually torture her, or was she kept in a separate area?
No, she was tied up, tied her hands and feet tied together, and then she was put in a toilet, like a quite a sort of dirty toilet, and she was left there. She heard his screams and cries, and then obviously then he went silent, and she. The weird thing is that she was kept there until the Saturday afternoon, and by coincidence, Tottenham were playing Everton that Saturday afternoon. I only worked this out during the trial. It wasn't mentioned during the trial, but they had a 5:30 p.m. kickoff, and it was about that time, about 5 o'clock, that she was suddenly released. So I don't know why they chose that. You know, I don't know whether they were sort of umming and ahhing, shall we kill her or not? But they decided to let her go. They sort of threatened her, don't go to the police, don't tell anyone, and she just made her way to a Turkish restaurant in another part of London, and spilled the beans, and then eventually the police were called.
And he was dead at the scene. I mean, was there plans for the moving of the body, or the hiding of it? What were they going to do?
Well, it emerged during the trial, and that's certainly what the jury's verdict of manslaughter in the case of the two men is, that, you know, they never intended to kill him in the first place. Again, there's just speculation about why he was abducted, why he was tortured. The judge said, it appears that he either had some money or some drugs, or he had the knowledge about the whereabouts of money or drugs that these people wanted, and that's probably what they were sort of torturing to get out of him. And whether he just didn't know what they were talking about, or whether he was just being incredibly stoic and wasn't giving it up, we don't know. But that's why I think he just sort of, his heart gave out. He just died during the course of that torture. So there was no intent to kill, allegedly.
Now, during the trials, and so far, there's been 5 men have been jailed so far for their roles in this abduction and killing of Koray. We were just talking before we came on, you know, there's no exact details about how many were in the gang, but we've totted up nearly 8, 9, 10. People could have been involved in some way in the transporting and the kidnap and the abduction and torture. There's no exact details of who was in the room with them when those things were happening, but this was a big gang.
Yes, that's right. And I mean, there were 6 people. Well, 5 were accused of murder, and 2 of those were convicted of manslaughter. 1 was convicted of kidnap only. 1 was convicted of kidnap and false imprisonment, and another one was cleared of all charges. But then on top of that, there's 2 more guys going on trial next year for murder and kidnap and false imprisonment. And then there are 2 others who were named during the trial, Ali Yildirim and Cem Orman, who both Turkish. They are now fugitives, believed to be probably in Turkey. Whether they will ever see a day in court, who knows? And
we had the guy you referred to who has since been shot dead.
Yes, he may have been charged at some point as well, because 2 of the people, you know, the ones who are going on trial next year, they were only charged in October. It was actually during the trial. So it's, the police are obviously still working this case, and I mean, the other unanswered question is who was behind it. You know, was there some Mr. Big who
directed it or whatever?
Told all these people, you know, this is why I want to know where my drugs are or whatever.
So the girlfriend basically raised the alarm. The police rushed over to this stadium pub, and was there anybody still at the scene, or was his body just there?
No, I think, well, what happened, they later worked out, is that the body was transported about 4 o'clock in the morning. It was taken to a trading estate in Tottenham to a guy there who owned a unit, and the body was then transferred from out the car of a guy called Ali Kavak to a stolen car, and then it was later the next day, I think on the Friday, it was driven to Loughton, which is on the outskirts of London, and there it was just dumped. Body was just dumped by an industrial estate.
Mm-hmm.
No efforts to sort of bury it or burn it or anything like that. It was just dumped naked. And then obviously they got rid of the stolen car, and they burnt out the van where they'd used to kidnap the Koray.
So
and
the scene itself,
Kavak,
I'm sure there was a lot of evidence left there.
Yeah, I mean, I think they were probably quite forensically aware. There wasn't a lot of evidence, but there was so much other evidence to prove, that the involvement. Ali Kavak and another guy, you get Herman. They immediately tried to leave the country. They got paid cash to get a taxi to Folkestone, and they were on their way to Amsterdam when the police caught them and stopped them and arrested them. And then the police slowly put it together, who was involved and what had been going on. They sort of traced it all back from where the body was found. They traced the I don't know if you have it in Ireland, ANPR cameras or automatic number plate recognition, but they use those to sort of trace this van and where it come from, and they basically sort of put the puzzle together.
And as regards the injuries and the cause of death, I mean, did they go into detail about how he was tortured and what each of those individual 94 injuries were caused by, or how?
No, there was no, I mean, there was obviously a pathologist report. He had a number of broken ribs, and he had severe head injuries. So he'd been either sort of struck over the head or, had his head banged against a wall or something. And other rather more personal, gruesome injuries, as you can imagine if you're torturing somebody. But they didn't go into details about. I'm not quite sure if there was an actual cause of death. It was just, it was just a combination of his injuries, I think.
It could have been a cardiac arrest as due to them. Now, there was a victim impact statement read out in the court, and a little bit of detail about the victim was heard. He had a son, I think, a teenage son, and a daughter. And I mean, the barbaric torture of the victim was kind of laid bare really in that. And how is this family going to speak to the children about how their loved one died?
Yeah, I mean, Koray had two children who were, when he died, he had a 15-year-old son and a 7-year-old daughter. And, can imagine how awful it was for them, and especially for the family, trying to keep the details from them. They were obviously they wanted to know where their dad is and what happened to him, but they obviously wanted to tell them, but they didn't want to tell them the true nature of as Melis, his cousin, said, how do we tell them about the barbaric torture that their father and uncle experienced? And then the son then gave a victim impact statement where he describes he has nightmares. He he doesn't feel safe, doesn't trust anyone. So yeah, the ripples of this crime are significant.
So Well, there's obviously some suggestion that there was, drugs or something involved in this. What do we know in particular about the gang that fled, members of which fled to Amsterdam in the aftermath of this? Clearly, they are involved in organised crime at some level. Do you have any idea where they sit?
Yeah, there is a significant history of this gang. They are sometimes known as the Tottenham Turks or the Tottenham Boys, which is, it was a point when they were sentencing this week, one of the defendants, because so there's a mixture. One of the Ali Kavak is obviously of Turkish origin, but to Gene Kennedy, one of the other guys sentenced is black, and there were a mixture of, well, it's mainly black defendants, and one of the to Gene Kennedy's lawyer was trying to say, well, clearly my client is not a member of the Tottenham Turks. He's not Turkish, but that is nonsense, really. I mean, because as anybody who knows this gang that knows that they are very closely linked to, the Tottenham Boys is more of a a mixture of black and Turkish criminals who they often get black guys to do the hitman jobs. There's numerous murders in North London, which where you'll see the victim Turkish, but the people convicted of it were black guys, and they're. I'm not being, it sounds like I'm making some racial remark, but it's basically they are local London guys who mix together. Tottenham is a very multicultural area, big Turkish community, big Afro-Caribbean community, and they all mix together, and naturally the criminals mix together as well. So it's a misnomer to say that because Tajin Kennedy is not Turkish, he wasn't part of the gang. I mean, it's not like the mafia where you have to be Italian to be in the mafia, or the La Cosa Nostra. It's a bit of a blurring. But the Tottenham Turks and their rival is a gang in Hackney called the Hackney Turks. They have done numerous tit for tat murders over the years. The Tottenham Turks are kind of run by a family called the Erens, Eren, which is a number of brothers. One of them, Kamal Eren, is believed to be in Turkey, but still pulling the strings, still sort of ordering. There was a trial last year, which I covered, where he was using EncroChat to, get guys again, black guys in North London to do his bidding. In that case, so
the Turkish gangs have a reputation of being extremely violent, but clearly the Tottenham Turks, as we'll call them, had never gone this far before, or that we know of. Has there been people who disappeared? Has there been bodies missing?
Well, yeah, I mean somebody I spoke to several people in the Turkish community, including Koray's one of his best friends, Mehmet Korkmaz. But one of the other people I spoke to said that it's so underreported, the crime in the Turkish community. Apparently there was a sort of house which was used as a torture chamber, in Tottenham for quite a while, which never got reported, never sort of came out. But the community knew that was going on. So there's a lot of underreporting. They also claim that there's not enough Turkish-speaking police officers. So it's difficult to sort of get into that community, get undercover or whatever.
So there's a sense that the Tottenham Turks are kind of running their own communities themselves.
Yeah, they no doubt there's a lot of fear of that name, or that brand name, if you will, and there's no doubt a lot of money involved. You know, they're bringing in a lot of drugs. I imagine it's mainly heroin. You know, Turkey tends to be heroin, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But and with money, with drugs like that, there's a lot of money involved. So there's people keeping quiet, mainly out of fear, but possibly because there's money in it for them. You know?
Like, we should be deeply shocked by this story, and I mean, I'm talking about people listening in the UK as well. It seems to me that a lot of stuff that goes on in the UK is underreported. A lot of crime, a lot of organised crime. It's so multicultural, and is it difficult as well for the journalists to get a handle on it, about who people are, where they're sitting in the underworld, you know, how big the gangs have got, etc.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this case has really got to me a bit like the Jerry Hutch trial. Listening to your podcast, I know you got really, really involved in that one, and I think I got a bit addicted to this trial. I went, you know, almost every day, and there's so many characters involved. There's so many there's several other trials that are, you know, going on in parallel, and it's definitely, there's so much going on in this case, and there's so much that we don't know. Some guy has promised to spill the beans, tell me the whole story of who's actually behind it, which I'm hoping to meet up with him in the next few weeks. But I mean, and it's interesting that this Tottenham is actually, it's the constituency of David Lammy, who is currently Shadow Home Secretary. Shadow Foreign Secretary. I think he used to be Shadow Home Secretary, but if Labour win the next government, he'll be kind of a big wig in that. But whether he will be able to do anything about it, I don't know. But
it's sort of, you mean about the trial, it sort of gave you a window into what was going on in a certain community that you wouldn't have otherwise had a clue. You get a bit of a snapshot, don't you, in a trial, and you get a little bit of a sense of who everyone is and where their positioning is. And like, what would the population of Tottenham be, and what would be the Turkish population? Would you have any idea?
I can't remember the I don't know what the population it's part of the London Borough of Haringey, but the Turkish community, Turkish Kurdish, I mean, they are sort of so closely mixed up that it's difficult to separate them, is about 600,000 in Tottenham, Enfield, mainly sort of those parts of North London. So it's quite a significant number, you know.
We forget how large London is. I think sometimes when you go and you just see that the crowds and the traffic, and it is so vast, isn't it? What's the population of London, the Greater London area? Do you know?
I've lost track. Is it 10 million or?
Right.
I think it might be possibly north of that. You know, it's
that's our entire country, north and south, plus some.
Yes,
you
right,
know?
yeah.
So that's just London alone. It's interesting to kind of get a grasp on what it is you're talking about. You know, you talk about a suburb here in Dublin, and you know, a very, very big suburb would have 100,000 in the population. So you're talking 6 times that in Tottenham alone.
Yeah, well, I wonder whether this guy Eugene Kennedy, who was like the main sort of scariest dude in this trial, what his Irish origins are with a name like Kennedy.
I know, for goodness sake, we don't want him. You can keep him now, Eugene Kennedy. What was his role in it?
Well, he got the longest sentence. He got 20 years for manslaughter. I feel like the judge really wanted, you know, was quite frustrated that that he hadn't been convicted of murder. And
their defense was that they didn't mean to kill him.
Yeah, their defense was that they
didn't plead guilty. Well, I mean, obviously,
no,
they pled not guilty for a start. But
yeah, I mean, exactly. Kennedy denied anything to do with it. I wasn't there. I wasn't he was referred to as the man in black during the trial. There was a key individual who was the man in black, and one of his co-defendants, Ali Kavak, named Kennedy. He was the man in black, which is, you know, a bit like grassing up your it's not gonna go down well. And he denied everything and refused to give evidence. But despite that, he got just a manslaughter. But yeah, I guess from the jury's point of view, they were saying, well, they kidnapped them. They may have, known that they were going to be kidnapped, but they didn't realise the extent of what, sort of torture was going to go on. And
were the jury given the option of both, of murder or manslaughter?
Yes, they were from quite an early stage of it. I think possibly right at the beginning of the trial.
Right.
Which, I mean, to a lot of trial watchers, people who watch the trial, they sort of struggle to understand how you can be guilty of manslaughter, because, as the judge said, this was an appalling murder.
Yeah.
Whoever conflicted those injuries murdered them. Because the legal definition is, if you inflict you intend to inflict serious, very serious harm, and somebody dies, then that's murder. It's only if you intend to cause some harm and somebody dies, then that's manslaughter. But 94 injuries, some of those injuries, that is definitely serious harm. So,
and on top of that, the kidnap before this torture proved that they intended as well to do it, because it wasn't as if they just sort of stumbled upon it, or it was a fight that broke out. This was a focus. They were obviously kept under surveillance after they had that meal out that night in Mayfair. They were kidnapped, bundled up, brought to this torture room. So it seems to me to be quite an extraordinary verdict by the jury. But of course,
yes. I wouldn't go so far as to call it a perverse verdict, but some may say it was. But yeah, I think the judge actually seemed to sort of struggle with knowing how to sentence them, because she was trying to work out what was in the jury's head when they came up with that verdict. So, arguably, maybe they should introduce sort of questionnaires for verdict juries, and they have to fill in their sort of reasoning of their verdict. But all they had to go on was guilty of this, not guilty of that.
And I mean, you sat through, as you said, every day of it yourself, so you did hear the evidence that they heard, and clearly have a different view of maybe what the outcome should have been. Would the state appeal this? Are they in a position to appeal it when there's been a jury?
I did wonder actually whether they could appeal it. I think they would struggle, because I think they would, I don't want to be harsh, but on the prosecutor, but it's almost as if, well, you've dropped the ball, sort of thing. You brought all the evidence, and if you can get a murder conviction, then that's nobody's fault but yours. You can't really have another go at it. So yeah, I think they're going to struggle. We struggle with that. Yeah.
So look, when you meet your contact and you get the details that you're hoping to get, the background, the Mr. Big behind all this, we'd be very interested to hear from you again. And also, one of our own is headed for you in the Old Bailey, of course, in the early new year, Liam Byrne. So you'll have to...
Oh, is he right? Yes. I saw he was arrested. I saw he's now been extradited. Yes.
Yes, and I think his first appearance is on January 8th. So you might come on and tell us about that as well.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, right. I look forward to... He's
one of our Mr. Bigs.
He's part of the Kinnigan.
Absolutely,
cartel, allegedly.
Yes, yeah, no, he's been described in court during a Criminal Assets Bureau case as the head of the Byrne Organised Crime Group, which is a subset of the Kinahan Organised Crime Group. He was the Dublin head of it, basically. So, I suppose that's still an allegation, is it? But it's been certainly read through the court record. So it's exactly what he is. But yeah, so we'll talk about that in the new year. And best of luck with your inquiries on this, because it definitely is a fascinating story. It's literally an underworld that we don't know very much about. The Turkish groupings in that part of the UK and probably beyond. So Chris Sommers, thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Have a good Christmas.
You too. I'm Nicola Talent and you're watching Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs and the underworld in Ireland and across the globe. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be the first to watch all our latest episodes. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts.